All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Henry. I'm our VP of Engineering for ScribbleLive. So what I really want to talk to you guys today a little bit about is coming from the lens of engineering leadership, changing the way your SaaS org operates with data. So I talked a little bit earlier this week, really getting into more of the technical side of doing root cause analysis, how that really fits through into the organization. But the lens I want to put on this a little bit today really drives around two main themes. One of them is, in the engineering group, we have tons of data. How do we get that out to the broader organization? How do we make that useful to people beyond the engineering group? And the other part of it, if you're coming from the engineering side, is how do you get this stuff paid for? So you come out here, you see all these cool tools that we have. You know, if engineering's just a cost center, how are you going to get this paid for? So one of the big themes I want to take you through as we're going through this today is really thinking about how do we change the view in the organization of engineering from being a cost center to a thought leader in there. And when you do that, it's a lot easier to try and get that budget that you need to kind of roll out some of these tools for you. So as we go through this here, this is actually, the true story of how we walked through this year and what we've been doing at ScribbleLive. So really quickly, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of ScribbleLive. What do we do? I'm going to go really short on that, but I just want to contextualize this so you can understand how we actually walked through the business as we're doing this. I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the different types of data that we have, and we're going to go into some of our stakeholders and personas. So if with this data, who does it matter to in the organization and in what way? And then going into one of the big themes that we have is, as we're trying to drive some of these initiatives through the org, being able to have that narrative that you're talking to is going to be really important. So customer success managers, account reps, whatever you want to call them, building out a CSM dashboard is going to be really big for them. And I'll talk about some of the examples that we've used for that. And then I'll give you a little bit of how-to. So without going super deep on this, just how do you get this started? If you think these are good ideas, what are some of the first steps that you take? And they're real easy to get some of this going. And then also from the behavioral side, so now we're changing how the whole org operates, right? From engineering to CSM to sales to all these people. How do you actually drive this out beyond your group? Okay, so very quickly on ScribbleLive, I won't spend too long on this, but we're in the marketing technology space. So we're in the B2B2C. So what this really means in the simplest form of this is, here's one of our platforms. It's called Engage. What you'll have with this is we have maybe like 1,000 different customers, and in their websites, they want to have some live publishing and engagement that they have for their audience. So the way this manifests for them is we're going to take things on the back-end UI that we have. They can configure it and run it there. They're going to take some little embed code, and they're going to embed it in their websites. So most of the stuff you have out there, you're not going to know it's powered by ScribbleLive, but if you see some of those live publishing, posts, comments, replies, all those sort of things, they're actually powered by us in the, the other company's websites themselves. So the key takeaway from this, though, that we're going to contextualize around this here is we have different data for people that are going into the platform, right? Our customers, our business customers that we sell to, and we're going to have a whole ton of data for their customers. So if we sell to someone who visited their site, what they're looking at, how they're engaging it. Okay. So this should be fairly general to any type of SaaS organization that you're working into. What are the different types of data that we have available? So if we say, okay, we have tons of data, how do we speak to this? So these are the 5 different groups we kind of talk about them in. Performance data is really your things like New Relic, right? So how the platform's performing. Are you having errors? Is it running slow? All the incident data. So this is your standard stuff that you have. If you threw a New Relic, you have this today. The other side of this is I start looking at adoption data. So if you're B2B, you sell to other businesses, who's going into the platform? Are the customers actually using it? Did we sell them a subscription? Most subscriptions are going to be annual, so they bought that. Has anyone been in the platform the last 60 days? That would be a very powerful thing to know and take action on. Activity data. So this is, okay, so if you're B2B2C, we have our customers, are they going in the platform? Then they embed this into their site. How effective is that? Are they getting a lot of engagement? Are people using it? Are people going to that site? Is it being effective for the customer? From the financial side, so if you take your data from like a Salesforce CRM or whatever your CRM tool is, you have all this different information on who are the customers? What market segments are they in? What is this worth? So if you have something like an incident that comes up, how do you describe that back to the organization? Well, this incident here affected 20 of our customers, and their MRR, so their monthly revenue that we have on them, is worth $2 million. Okay, this is a $2 million incident that affected these 20 people. That's a lot more meaningful conversation than just, oh yeah, we had an incident on the platform today, or we had 20 things that happened last month. Trying to drive those business conversations are a key part of moving this forward. And then comparative data. Okay, so one of the big challenges we've had in the MarTech space is looking at vanity metrics. So okay, we have 100,000 users on the site, or we had 2 million people look at this. So what? What does that mean from that? So maybe we want to look at some comparative data. How did we do versus last month? How do we do versus last event? How do we do versus the last campaign that we did? How do we know when we're doing better? And that's a big part of being able to prove ROI. If you can prove ROI for their customer, they're going to be stickier, it's more effective for them, and that's better for us as well too. Okay, so quickly for this, I want to take you through, we're trying to push this through the organization, so what are some of the different stakeholders that we have? I just want to assume the customer's angry if we had incidents, but look at customers, look at your support teams, your customer success managers, engineering, these are the general ones you already know about, and the leadership. And I'll kind of take it through kind of two general use cases. So one of them is if you have incidents on the platform, how do we make that more meaningful to people outside the engineering group? How do we keep them informed of what's happening and the latest information so they're not bugging you every 5 minutes? What's the update? Is this fixed? What's the ETA? Who did this impact? And also talking a little bit just general data visibility. So we have all this information. How do we make it meaningful? So I'm going to kind of walk through this really quickly one by one for this, and then I'm going to tell you how this is kind of like a starting point you'll see in a lot of SaaS organizations, and then I'm going to take you through, okay, if you're here, how do you get to the next spot? How do you make that more meaningful? So engineering, a lot of times, we're looking at our engineering tools. We're looking at New Relic, Sumo Logic, PagerDuty. We're looking at our log aggregators, incident event management, but a lot of times when we fix something, do you know which customers this impacted, or how important that is, or how much money is tied up in that? So we don't, a lot of times we're not looking at the financial side. We don't know how often these incidents happened or how often they're using the platform. If this did impact customers, are they even using the platform right now? So all that type of information, a lot of times this is all that we're really looking at. From the support side, okay, so hopefully they're using some of the tools that you have here. They're probably going to go in, they'll get a ticket from the customer, they'll go in and look at a bit and see what was the customer recently doing on the platform last time that they logged in, maybe some of the users. But they probably don't know if a support ticket comes in, hey, is this a customer that is $5,000 a year, or do we have $1 million of revenue with them? Because that really changes the impact of the urgency and the resources that we need to put against it. For customer success, okay, well, most places they're not using your, they're not using your New Relic, they're not using your logging tools, activity data. So they'll go in, they'll see what customers are doing on the platform. They'll look at some of the financial data, they'll know what it's worth. But if an incident comes in, most of the time, all that we're really going to hear is, hey, my customer says the platform's down. Is it fixed? Is it done? I don't know if how often this has happened before. I don't know how we fixed it. I don't know how impactful it was. So trying to share that information back and forth can be difficult. And again, for the leadership, a lot of times, their big themes are going to be around, what are the new sales that we have? Tell me about quarterly revenue that's coming up. What are some of the high churn risk customers? But we want to make it more meaningful than that. What if we could go and say that, hey, a new feature that's coming in, or this incident that happened, impacted, say, like, we have social integrations on here, right? So Instagram, for example, they're making a lot of changes in their APIs recently, so a lot of people have been impacted by that. We have as well, too. What if you could say instead that this Instagram issue is going to affect 100 of our customers that are worth $10 million in recurring revenue? That's the impact of this. And then put that up on the dashboards. That's the type of conversations that we want to start having now. Now I can take something that was just a techie problem that maybe the leadership didn't really care about as much before, and I can surface it in a way that we can have a meaningful business conversation about it. And again, the customer, they're not really going to generally see what we have internally here, right? Uptime, all that sort of stuff, when it's down, how it's impacted. You may have a status page or something like that. They're mostly just looking at the activity, and they'll know how much they spend on it. Okay, so that's kind of like framing the challenge for the problem set that we have here. Let's talk about what we do with it. So one of the big themes for us has been building out a CSM dashboard. So we have all the New Relic information internally. How do we make this useful to people outside of our group? So I'll walk through a couple of really simple examples that we had, but these are very impactful for starting some of those conversations. So right now you'll have a lot of 400 errors, 500 errors. what we talked about in our last one was making sure that you actually get these right. So when you're throwing errors in your platform, 400s are someone's calling us improperly. So if you have an API or someone logs in incorrectly, that's very different than 500 errors where our platform's crashing. We have issues on the back end. So if you get that data correct, that's going to be very meaningful for you. The next thing that we did for that is, when we look at this from this side, how do you contextualize, okay, we do 1 billion requests a day on our platform. How do I make that meaningful? There's a 1% error rate. Okay, that went up to 4%. So what? How do I make that useful outside of engineering? How do I know if that's a real problem? Which customers are impacted by this? Are they calling us wrong, or do we have an issue? So these are actually some real scenarios that we've had where 99% of the errors on the platform are not actually us. So that's two things. One of them is actually going back and calling these guys up. We made up the names for them. Is calling them up and saying, hey, you guys are calling us wrong. What's going on there? Like, help them integrate correctly. And second side, these are the ones that we actually need to take action on. It's very useful to actually know, do we really have a problem when you're really building out platforms at scale? And I'll talk a little bit about how we set this up as we go through it as well too. But the key part of this is contextualizing it around the customer suddenly made errors meaningful to the business in a way that they can talk about. So even if CSMs are chasing you, hey, there's an issue on the platform. Did this impact my customers? Well, look at the dashboard. And how much? Do you have 50 errors that they got hit by? Or is there just 1 or 2? And if their name's not on the list, then they're good right now. They can self-serve themselves. They can look at that. And this also really helps. We'll have a lot of customers that call us sometimes, and they'll say, did you even know you had a problem? Well, yeah, we did. Or at least part of our organization did. Did your customer success people do? Did you know that, hey, are these very sensitive customers that when they saw this, you should have proactively reached out to them? Because every time you have a little blip, you don't want to go throw that up on your status page and necessarily tell the world. But if you do have some that are more sensitive to that, maybe you do want to reach out and have that personal touch and say, hey, we saw this happen to you. We're doing something about it. We'll let you know when it's done. So from the adoption side, a lot of you are going to have some sort of behavioral metrics that you're tracking on your platform, right? So if you use Pendo, Mixpanel, Intercom, any of those sort of things, how much are your customers going into the platform? What are they looking at? What are they doing? So let's look at this from the very simplest side. A typical CSM, you're going to have maybe 50 plus customers in your portfolio that you have to look after. How do you call them up and have a meaningful conversation with them, right? So a lot of times your typical ones, you're going to call them, there's a renewal coming up, or there is an issue or a support ticket that they're, yelling at you about. But how do you call them, or maybe there's new features that are coming out on the platform. But other than waiting for those to come out, how do you call your customers in a meaningful way to have something to talk about? So one of the key ones that we've been starting to look at is, okay, so let's look at the adoption type data. So if we can pull the data that's coming out of something like Pendo and put it into one spot that says, by the way, here's all the customers that haven't logged into the platform in the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. What are you doing about this? What are you doing about this CSM? What are you doing about this sales? Reach out to them, talk to them, find out why this is not useful, why they're not using it. Suddenly you can operationalize that. And it's sitting on real-time dashboards and insights. It's sitting right in front of everyone every day. We've got 4 of these up in front of our engineering group. We've put these TVs up next to our CSMs. They're sitting there staring at it. You walk around. You guys called Fancy Shoe yet? What's happening there? It's a very meaningful conversation that you can have. And now you're really starting to justify, why did we buy this? Why are we doing this? Why do we have this? This isn't just for the engineers. This is for everyone. Now, one of the other things I will note for this is this data does exist already in probably all of your companies somewhere. So what's the challenge? What's different in what we're trying to do here? The problem is that, for us, if a CSM wants to prep for one of their calls, they'll have to go into the platform to look at when people are using it. They'll go into Pendo and look at when the last time that they were in there. They're going to look at activity data somewhere else. They're going to go to Salesforce to look for some of the other data. There's some things they may have to ask engineers out to have a better understanding. Where they're going to look up support tickets to see when there are issues. It can take 30, 60 minutes to properly prep for a call, assuming you have the motivation to do that. Right, so one of the big themes from this is you have this data already, put it in one spot, a single source of truth where you can find that information. And at least start there. You want to deep dive? Cool, drill into the other ones. If you have usability issues, you'll go into that platform. But if you could just pull up one page and says, here's everything that you need to know to get started, what's happening on our platform, or what's happening with our customer, then you're at a good part to start. Then you can go and jump in wherever you need to deep dive beyond that. The other one we've been talking about a little bit is, we call it, who's having a big day? So for us, again, remember, we're embedded in people's websites, right? So a big day for them, you can see here, so Aerostar Vancorp, most people, maybe they have like 2,000 engagers, or sorry, watchers on their site. So these are people that are visiting, they're looking at how many people are actively on your website right now. They had a big day today, 50 times the number of people that are normally in came in. That's a good time to reach out to your customers, right? You have this real time, you can see something is happening. Why aren't you calling them right now? Right, find out, what was your big day? Hey, how can we help you better with this? You know, which of our use cases are you using? We've seen for customers like you, you're only using one of maybe our 4 main use cases. Have you considered this one and how that can really help increase your engagement even further? Hey, this went really well. How are you getting that data and analytics out of it? What are you going to do with that next? How do you tell that story back internally to your organization that this platform is worth it for you because it is driving a meaningful difference and you can prove it right here. And that's why you don't need to churn next year when your marketing budgets are under pressure. This is why you should actually keep this platform. So it's a very simple start by being able to say, here's the big people in the platform, and now this is not just an engineering dashboard. This is part of our CSM dashboard. This tells what's happening on the platform in the context of our customers. Last one I'll talk to you about, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we can actually implement some of these really simply. So is building out more of a health score for your customers. So if you're in the CSN group, you probably have some form of, you know, what's my churn risk for these customers? It could just be a red, yellow, green, right? You know, red, they're high at risk. Green, you know what? We think they're good. They're going to renew, right? But you want to make that more meaningful from that, because how did you get that information? Well, you know, maybe they haven't been responsive, or you know, maybe they said things are fine. They haven't really complained about it. Maybe we had a talk and we thought they were good. Yellow could just be like, I don't know. We haven't heard from them. We're unsure right now. What if you could take these 5 different categories of data and start feeding that into a health score for them? Right, so looking at performance, okay, well, hey, if this is mission critical for them, and this has been down 5, 10, 15 times for them this year, wouldn't that be really good to know when you're looking at this health score that you have for them? Feed that data into it. From the adoption side, well, if they haven't been in the platform in 90 days, half a year, good chance they're going to churn next year. You might want to start doing stuff about that in advance. That would be meaningful to inform that decision at an aggregate level for your customers. Activity data. Okay, cool, they're using the platform. Is it doing anything for them? Is it increasing engagement? Are more people using it? You know, do they have it on a whole bunch of their sites or their campaigns or events? From comparative side, okay, how's this trending over time? So, okay, so maybe it's working, but is it working less? Are they maybe shifting to other things? Are just less people on it? Are there less groups that are using it in the organization? And if that one group comes under pressure, or new management comes in, or your champion leaves, then what? So being able to feed all these in are really useful. And I put this last one in italics but it's kind of helpful just to know, okay, are they even paying their bills? We'll have some people that renew the next year that haven't paid for the year before. That's probably a good thing to know. Probably not a good sign to just renew them either. You want to go figure out what's going on. And also, look at the value of that they're paying for this platform. Are they getting what it's worth? Right? If this is maybe a $5,000 subscription, okay, maybe they are. If this is $100,000, if this is $1 million, if they're a bigger client here, is it worth that money to them when they have to justify that internally? So being able to take all this information and feed that into a health score is really valuable. And then, however you want to deal with that, these could be things that you're pumping up to the insight dashboards as well too, right? We've done all the data aggregation on the back end, right? We've figured out how to come up with this information, pump that up into New Relic and say, all right, here's the people with the lowest health scores. Go do something about it. This has been here for a month. Why are they still in the same spot? Why have you not improved them? Okay, so 2 really quick slides just on how to implement some of these. So one of the biggest themes that we saw here as we were talking about this today was having client-level information. So if you're running a multi-tenant SaaS platform, you don't have that out of the get-go, right? You look at your new Relic dashboards right now, you don't have any of that information. All you're going to have is errors, web transaction times, aggregate information. That's not useful to anyone outside of engineering. One of the simplest things you can do is, I call them Ingress Points. So one of the big things you want to do when you're architecting is have a single spot that you can call into the platform. So if you have a microservice architecture for us, we've got 25, 30 of these. There could be 2 to 20 instances of any of them running. We don't want you calling in directly to 50 of these. I can't do throttling, I can't do counts, I can't get high-level aggregate information. That's much harder to do. So for us, we'll have an API that you can call into. That's an ingress point. So if you want to do a custom implementation, you've got that back-end console where you configure everything, and you've got the embeds, which you embed into your site. Those are our 3 ingress points for us. You'll have something that's maybe similar to that makes sense in your particular platforms. So at those ingress points, one of the nice things about that is build a little middleware, a reusable component that you can go and say, all right, when you're calling us, you have a security token. That token, look up in your cache, who does this belong to? And then get the client name back from that, and you put that into your request as a custom attribute. So this is a new Relic feature. If you're not familiar with it, the new Relic custom attribute, as soon as you tag that on there, it stays with the request all the way. It goes through all your microservices, all through the back end, all the way back up to the front end. So this is really useful for you because now suddenly those insight dashboards that we showed for you there, that's immediately available. All you have to do is put this into that one ingress point, record that information, it traces with it, and now it's a data element that you can work off of. Suddenly you went from being an engineering platform to now I can talk about the customer. The other one, and I'm giving you the very simplest basic form of this is not the ideal end state, but if you've got your performance data from things like New Relic, adoption data from Pendo, Mixpanel, wherever that's coming from, or people actually logging into the platform, activity data, so how the platform's actually performing, any comparative data, financial data, in the simplest form of it. And this is one of the nice ways to get it started is just get something out there so people can see this, so they get excited about it. Just pull in a Lambda that pulls in the data from these. They all have APIs on them. Right? Take that data, run a Lambda, throw it up into the New Relic Insights API. It gets you started. In the ideal version of this, you're actually sucking all this data out. You're going to put it into your data lake. You'll do your aggregations. You'll build your semantic layers. And once you have that semantic data at the end, then you can run some scheduled jobs that pull that data out and push it in. But it's still the same concept. You're just getting a little bit smarter about how you build your data lake out. But again, it's just an API to throw up custom events and metrics. Okay. Running the behavioral change in the org. So this is all great. We had a really good idea. You come back from this, you're like, guys, we should be a data-driven company. They're like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever, Steve. We're kind of doing some other stuff. So how do you actually mobilize this? And these are the three things that we did that were most meaningful to us in driving this through the organization. First one is reach out. You guys are the ones with the data. Walk up to your CSMs. If you could have anything you wanted, what would it be? Don't think about what you've done before. Forget the organization, what it's been, how you've operated. If you could see anything right now, what would you want? There's a customer you have. What do you want to know about them? Here's an incident we saw recently. What would be more meaningful for you? Start that conversation. Get people thinking differently because this is different than you've operated before. And then if you can do it, give it to them. Because what you'll find after that is you guys are going to have to be the first legs that really start this out. Right, so you get people interested, and you show some of this stuff, and then you put it up on the dashboard. And then you point at it and say, what'd you do about this? They just had a big day. Did you call them? Throw it out in a Slack channel. Put it into the leadership meetings. They did good? Right back. Hey, you know what? Tell us a little testimonial. Send an email back out to the group. Hey, they reached out. Red Bull, Dell, whoever it is. They had a big day. We called them, and then this happened. Oh, that's cool. Maybe I should try that. Who can I do for this? And then the next part that you'll start seeing coming is they're like, hey, can you show us this too? Can I get this data? Yeah, and start throwing some of those up. So just start by asking, and you'll see things move from there. Second part is getting some champions. So in the different departments that you have, your CSM, your sales, your product, your leadership, you're going to want those champions there too. So these are the ones that generally when you ask, they're the first ones that were excited and actually did something about it. But use them to help drive things within your org. Let them know that, hey, these are some of the point people that did great work. Go talk to them and see how they did it and what they're working for and how they can roll that out within their group because they have those relationships. And the third one is getting executive support. So if things are going to matter, you're going to want it to be top down as well too. You want to be scrappy, you want to be bottom up, you want to have those champions. But if your executive team can come in and say, this is really important to us and here's why we're doing it, that's a really big deal. And now these seem a little bit maybe vague in business terms for it, but this is a really key theme because if you can drive new revenue, if you can reduce churn, if you can have the business conversation about it, that's why we're doing this. And then here's how we can help at the different levels. So again, these are important just for when you want to have that discussion outside of engineering, right? When you want to go and say, here's why we're buying this tool. We're not buying it so I can see more details on it or be a better DevOps culture. Those are, at that point, you're just a cost center, right? It's like, how many tools do I have to buy so you can run this platform for me? No, we want to buy this because our CSMs want to know our customers better. We want to know what they're doing so we can have more meaningful business conversations with them. So it's easier for them to reach out so we can understand what they're doing and why. And it's in our face all the time. It's sitting up in these dashboards that anyone can look at. Churn reduction. So this has been our biggest theme. the way we funded all the stuff that I wanted to do this quarter is saying, what's our biggest problem? Churn. We're in the MarTech space. There's churn in there. Customers are going to move over. There's a lot of different tools and options. Budgets are under pressure. So how do you stop your customers from churning? Ask the CSM group. Generally, you're going to hear some things around platform stability or data visibility. We don't know what our customers are doing. We don't know how they're using it, or at least it's not very accessible in an easy way. A lot of times you have the data, you just don't have it in a meaningful form to you. So churn is quantifiable. When you want to go answer the question, why am I paying for this? Why am I buying this? Well, I'm buying this because I'm going to lose 50 customers that are worth X amount of dollars here. And I don't know exactly what it's going to get to, but we all agree that maybe we can, our goal is to take that down 5%. And if we can do that, that's worth, $5 million to us as an organization. This is a $50,000 tool that we think is going to be really key to driving that forward. Run the math on that. That's a very easy conversation to have. That justifies your investment. What am I getting from the business side when I go ask for this product to my leadership? The other side is, okay, if I can see which use cases they're using, if I can have better conversations with them, I want to upsell and cross-sell. And that's helpful for us internally, as in sell more products that you have, sell them better features, but it's better for your customer generally too, that, hey, like when you had your big day, what else could you have been doing? How can you make this more effective for them? And that helps us and it helps them. So last thing I'll just mention on this is really around the theme that we're looking at internally here is taking engineering from just being a cost center, right, where we're just a drain on cogs, and really turning it into a thought leader. So when you want to have this conversation internally, if you can shape why we're doing this, who this impacts, what the business value or revenue or saving of money that we're going to have from this, from loss, not having to lose people to churn, not having to lose people to customers, because we better understand and we can have more meaningful business conversations, then it's easy to justify this investment. And that changes the way everyone operates. So lastly, quick summary for this was around, start with these as your key stakeholders. And you may have someone else in your org that makes sense for you, but if you want to go and have this conversation next, big thing is just ask, what do you want to see? Find some of your champions. Who's going to support this? Who's eager for this? Get some executives on board. Get someone that's going to champion this from the top as well too. The easiest way to get started with this is come up with a theme that makes sense for you. For us, we call it a CSM dashboard. Customers are the most important people for your business. So if you can see what they're doing in a meaningful way, that's huge. And start working towards building a better health score so you really understand your customer and how effective you are for them. And then lastly, this gives you, when you need to use the business words to have these conversations. We want to reduce churn. We want to do upsell, cross-sell. We want to know our customer better. Go ask your leadership, what's big for you this quarter, this year? Where were you really focused? One of these is probably going to come up, if not a couple of them, right? So find where they're already focused and then figure out how you can tailor the data that you're showing everyone internally to really help achieve those goals. And now you're helping to solve the business problem. You're helping to be the thought leaders who are like, actually, I'm going to help you achieve your business objectives for this year. This isn't for me as an engineer. This is me to help the business operate better. So these are the conversations we had that really helped things drive it forward for us.
I did, yeah.
And that's all that I had.